The robotics team laughed when I joined, having no clue I was an engineer who'd built military drones. The team captain held up my application form like it was contaminated and read my name out loud. Eli Casper, transfer student, no prior robotics experience. He paused while the 12 other students snickered. Says here he's interested in learning the basics. The captain's name was Jordan Whitmore, a senior with perfectly styled hair and a varsity jacket he wore even indoors. I stood in the doorway of Kennedy High's robotics lab holding a backpack that contained more technical knowledge than everyone in that room combined, and I said nothing. Jordan tossed my application onto a workbench. He asked if I even knew what an Arduino was, and when I said I'd heard of them, the girl next to him actually laughed. Her name was Skylar Chen, and she was Jordan's girlfriend and the team's lead programmer. She said they weren't a beginner's club, that Kennedy Robotics was ranked third in the state, and maybe I should try the computer club instead. I'd been living in suburban Oregon for exactly 43 days after spending 6 years designing autonomous weapon systems for Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works division. My security clearance had been revoked, my marriage had ended, and my name had been added to a congressional investigation into unauthorized drone deployments that killed civilians in 3 countries. Moving to a small town under my mother's maiden name was the only way to avoid the reporters and investigators. My real name was Eli Bergman, and I'd led a team of 47 engineers building AI targeting systems that could identify threats at 3,000 feet and eliminate them with 98% accuracy. I was 31 years old, looked young enough to pass for 23, and had enrolled in community college classes while living with my aunt. Nobody at Kennedy High knew any of this. The robotics club met 3 times a week, and I needed something normal in my life, something that reminded me why I'd loved engineering before it became about body counts and congressional hearings. Jordan said I could stay and observe if I kept quiet and didn't touch anything expensive. He pointed to a metal folding chair near the back. I sat down and watched them work on their competition robot, a mechanical arm mounted on a wheeled base designed to pick up colored blocks and sort them into bins. The design was competent but inefficient, using servos where stepper motors would provide better precision and a control system that relied on pre-programmed sequences instead of real-time sensor feedback. They were building a glorified toy. A junior named Marcus was soldering connections, holding the iron at the wrong angle, and creating cold joints that would fail under vibration. Another student named Priya was programming movement sequences, writing code that was functional but inelegant. Jordan moved between stations offering advice that was mostly textbook theory he'd memorized without understanding the underlying principles. The regional competition was in 5 weeks, and Jordan kept announcing that this was Kennedy's year to finally beat Lincoln Prep, their rival school that had won the state championship 3 years running. I watched their robot attempt a practice run and counted 7 points where the design would fail under competition stress. The arm's range of motion was limited by poor joint placement. The wheelbase was too narrow for the weight distribution. The sensor array couldn't distinguish between similar colored objects. I wrote down each issue in my notebook and said nothing. After the meeting, Sky noticed me still sitting there and asked if I'd understood anything I'd watched. I said it looked like they were making good progress, and she exchanged a look with Jordan that clearly meant they thought I was clueless. Jordan told me if I wanted to join officially, I'd need to pay the $50 club fee and pass a basic skills assessment. He said they'd test me next week on circuit assembly, basic programming, and mechanical design. I said I'd be ready and left before anyone could ask more questions. That evening I reviewed files from my previous work, technical specifications for the MQ-9 Reaper drone, navigation algorithms for autonomous flight systems, targeting protocols that could process satellite imagery in real time. Everything was classified, and I technically shouldn't have copies, but when your security clearance gets revoked, you make backups. I'd spent 6 years designing systems that were supposed to protect American soldiers. The technology worked perfectly. The problem was that perfect technology in imperfect hands made mistakes that killed wedding parties and school buses and aid workers. 3 congressional committees were now investigating whether our targeting algorithms had been deployed prematurely, whether we'd known about the civilian casualties, whether anyone should face criminal charges. I thought about those high school kids struggling with their simple robot and felt something like nostalgia for when engineering was about solving problems instead of creating them. I joined the robotics club because I needed a reminder that technology could be innocent. But watching them mock me for being a beginner made me realize that even in a high school workshop, people judged your worth based on credentials. I went back the next week with my $50 and submitted to Jordan's skills assessment. He gave me a circuit board kit and asked me to assemble a basic LED array with push-button controls. And what happened next changed everything. Full story is linked below or on my channel.